In 2013, National Geographic came out with a special edition. I have it right here in my office. It was called Your Brain, a User's Guide, and the subtitle and the main study that this special edition revolved around was called The Illusion of Intention. What they found, and I believe this was reported in Scientific American, is that approximately 1 second before you make any significant decision, and by the way, significant could be whether a sandwich or salad for lunch, okay? The significant could be that insignificant, and this still happened, okay? But 1 second before any significant decision, there's an electrical spike in the brain. It took them years to track it back, but they did. And what they found is that the electrical spike is your unconscious mind mandating what your decision and choice will be. It is not a request. It is not a suggestion. It is a command. And when it happens, it's almost impossible to resist because we think it's our idea of the best choice, when in reality, it's what's being mandated to us by our unconscious mind, which may or may not be correct. Because in that same research, what they found is that approximately 50% of our beliefs about our life based on our memories are in error. Okay. Next slide. In ancient manuscripts, about 6 years into the 12 years that Hope was depressed, I ran across this, and it changed my search. This was said and written by Solomon about 3,000 years ago, who a lot of people consider the wisest man who ever lived. And here's what he said: guard your heart above everything else, for from it flows all of the issues of life. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a Hebrew or Aramaic scholar, but I went and found 3 of them and asked them and paid one of them for his opinion. What Solomon is saying right here, in that language and in that context, what does it mean? Would that include cancer? Would that include depression? What does it mean? All 3 of the scholars in that area, independently, they didn't know each other, came back with the same answer. They said, what Solomon is saying here in that language and that context means any problem you could ever have in your life comes from here. This is the source. And I asked, so you're saying Solomon was saying that a spiritual heart issue is the source of cancer? A spiritual heart issue is the source of depression? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not talking religion. I run from religion, okay? But I am talking spiritual. Love, joy, peace, forgiveness versus anxiety, fear, anger, unforgiveness, that sort of thing. Okay, so now I come back to, all right, what is your issue inside of you right now that is maybe the source of the problem you thought about when we started several slides ago? Okay, next slide. Please. This is the worst slide ever done in the history of PowerPoint. and I'm sorry. They'll tell you never, ever put this much information on one slide. It's just awful. Don't ever do it. Well, I couldn't help it. This is so breakthrough. This is so critical that I had to put it, and I had to put it in context. And I even paid the Dallas Morning News a large fee to be able to use this article in my books and other places. But anyway, let me tell you what this is. Since the dawn of Western medicine, when you start feeling bad, you go in, they give you tests. The tests come back. They call you back in to tell you the results of your test. And the doctor says something like, Alex, I'm so sorry to tell you, but you have cancer, or you have diabetes, or you have, like with Hope, depression, or when I was in my 20s, acid reflux, or whatever. All right. Well, when you recover from the news, typically a person given that news will ask the doctor, where did this come from? How did I get it? Some might say, I've got a twin brother. We've lived an almost identical life. He's healthy as a horse, and I have health problems all the time. How come? We eat the same food. We grew up the same way. The answer is we don't know. 3 words. We don't know. So Southwestern is trying to find out and prove for the first time where illness and disease comes from. What's the source? So Southwestern has been studying this for years and testing it, and they finally reached the end of their study and announced to the world, we found it. Yes, after all these years, we have got it and we can prove it. Well, what did they find? They found that the source of illness and disease is your memories. You heard that right. Your memories. I'm not going to read this whole thing. You can read it yourself. They have permission to give you this PowerPoint if you would like it. But I am going to read just a couple of parts. Throughout the world, scientists are finding that cells and organisms record their experiences, and these cellular memories might mean the difference between a healthy life and death. Cancer can result from bad memories replacing good ones. Psychological trauma, addiction, depression come from abnormal memories in the cells. Diseases later in life are due to errant memories programmed into cells as people age. And now, here they go. Now, we are going to understand this information and treat disease at its root by adjusting them. And Dr. Nestler has this Post-it note to that. This may provide one of the most powerful ways of curing illness, says Dr. Nestler. For many diseases, treatments today aren't much better than Band-Aids, but when we figure out how to do this, it's going to change everything. Well, ladies and gentlemen, just delete the word cellular. He's talking about your memories. If you've got a memory with anger in it, with unforgiveness, with low self-worth, with hopelessness, helplessness, anxiety, we used to think in psychology that those memories with that kind of content wouldn't bother you if you didn't think about them. Today, we know nothing could be further from the truth. Those memories 24/7 resonate a fear-based signal to the hypothalamus in the brain, and when that is received, the hypothalamus flips the stress switch on. What's the big deal about that? Well, according to the Center for Disease Control and research on their website, 90+% of illness and disease is related to stress. Dr. Bruce Lipton at Stanford says it's not 90, it's at least 95, and maybe even more. All right, next slide. Dr. John Sarno, MD, NYU and Harvard. Adult chronic pain and illness are caused by destructive cellular memories, which are almost always unconscious. And you're thinking, okay, well, wait a minute. What about the food? What about the exercise? What about, those are all great things. And I would recommend coordinating with someone who knows those things to make sure you're doing them right. But yeah, by all means, do those. But I do not believe that those are the source. A couple of things that might support that. Dr. Thomas Paris, MD, Boston University. They do the longest study ever done on people that live to be over 100. I believe the study took like decades and thousands and thousands of people that live to be over 100 all over the world. They're looking for a common thread, okay? Is there a common thread that causes someone to be healthy and happy and live long versus illness and disease and not live long? Well, at Boston University, they found one common thread and only one. And it was reported in the study when it was written up. What was it? People who live to be over 100 worry less than people who don't live to be 100. That was it. One thing. They don't worry. You may have heard on the news just in the last couple of years, I think, the lady who had lived the longest of anyone in modern history. I believe her name was Jean, and she was from France, and she lived to be 122 years old, okay? Well, a couple of interesting things about Jean is until 117, evidently she was a chain smoker, and up until the day she died, it's reported that she ate approximately 3 pounds of chocolate a week. When I dug a little bit deeper, I found an interview with a friend of hers, and they were asking, what was it about her? Did you notice anything as to why, you know, she might live to be 122 and healthy, and, you know, most of us don't? And guess what the friend said? Yeah, the only thing I know, it wasn't her diet. She didn't exercise, but nothing bothered her. Negative things happened. It just kind of rolled off her back, and she didn't worry. Okay, so I believe the latest research we have is backing up what Solomon said 3,000 years ago, and can be a source place for you to address your issue as well. Okay, next slide. No more than 2% of illness, based on the research, is from a physical source. Professor William Tiller, head of the physics department at Stanford for years. I was having breakfast with him in Payson, Arizona, and he said, Alex, in physics, the unseen, non-physical is always the parent of the seen physical. No exceptions. Next slide. Already shared this. Up to 95% illness and disease, stress. Next slide. The APA axis, adrenal pituitary, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Say that 5 times fast. That's the clinical name for fight or flight stress. Most people know it as stress or fight or flight. It's also the APA axis. Okay. Next slide. Dr. Daniel Amen, in his wonderful book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Mind, when you remember or think about a particular event, your brain releases the same or similar chemicals to those that were originally released. In other words, it takes you back there internally. Your unconscious mind does not differentiate between past, present, or future. It treats everything as present tense reality. Next slide. Andrew Weil, in his #1 best-selling book, Health and Healing, says all illness psychosomatic. Ladies and gentlemen, he's not saying it's not real. In fact, if you read the book, he's saying it's absolutely real. It is just not from any physical source.